The worst investment I ever made? How long do you have? I've made some very bad ones, but that doesn't really bother me. It may bother the shareholders, but that's another question. You're going to make mistakes in life. I mean, there's no question about it. You don't want to make them on the big decisions, who you marry and some things like that. So there's no way I'm going to make a lot of business and investment decisions without making some mistakes. I may try to minimize them. I don't dwell on them at all. I don't look back. The biggest mistakes are the ones that actually don't show up. They're the mistakes of omission rather than commission. We've never lost that much money on any one investment, but it's the things that I knew enough to do that I didn't do. We have missed profits of as much as maybe $10 billion in things that I knew enough to do and I didn't do. Now, the fact I didn't buy Microsoft way back is not a foregone opportunity because I didn't know enough to make that decision. But there have been other investments where I did know enough to make the decision, and for one reason or another, I either didn't do it at all or I did it on a small scale. I was sucking my thumb when I should have been writing checks, basically. And those don't show up. There's no place where it shows missed opportunities, but I've missed some big ones. The triumphs in life are partly triumphs because you know that everything isn't going to be a triumph. I would never get too hung up on mistakes. I know a lot of people that really agonize over them, and it just isn't worth it. I mean, tomorrow's another day, and you live it forward and just go on to the next thing.
You went to Alice Deal Junior High School, got a lot of C's and D's, as I understand. And then you went to Woodrow Wilson High School, finished 16th in your class, but you were...
Class of 17, we might add.
Right. So when you graduated from the University of Nebraska, you applied to Harvard Business School and were rejected.
That's true.
Has Harvard ever announced that they've regretted that decision?
Well, I understand the development officer is kind of unhappy.
So you rejected by Harvard, you went to Columbia Business School, and then you met the man who you really idolized, Ben Graham. So when you graduated, you wanted to go work for him and his firm, and then he rejected you. But then he ultimately changed his mind, and you went to work for Ben Graham.
I kept pestering him. Yeah, I made a real pest of myself.
You tried to get into 3 colleges. Each time they rejected you.
No, I tried. There's an examination that young people, if you want to go university, you have to take the examinations. So I failed 3 times.
Right.
But a lot of fail. I failed for funny things that I failed a key primary school test for 2 times. And I failed 3 times for the middle schools. And you will never believe in Hangzhou, my city, there's only 1 middle school that lasts only 1 year. It was changed from primary school to middle school because our graduates of our school, no middle school accept us because we were too bad. Yeah. They would become a middle school.
What effect did it have, though, being rejected?
Well, I think we have to get used to it. We're not that good. Even today, we still have a lot of people reject us. I think when I graduated from universities, and before I, for 3 years, I tried to fill in the universities. So I applied jobs for 30 times, got rejected. I went for a police. They said, no, you're not good. I went to even the KFC. When KFC came to China, come to my city, 24 people went for the job. 23 people were accepted. I was the only one guy. And we went for police. 5 people, 4 of them accepted. I was the only guy that I received it. So to me, being turned down, rejected. Oh, by the way, I told you that I applied for Harvard for 10 times, rejected. I know I'll be rejected. I just don't want to say that.
Yeah, sorry now. 10 times you wrote them and said, I'd like to come to Harvard.
Yeah. And then I told myself, someday I should go teach there, maybe.
I think that can be arranged.
A lot of venture capitalists give you money because there is such a American model already there. But they say, Alibaba, we don't see this kind of model, right?
They
And
say
then-
Jack's crazy. Is what
Yeah,
they
this is crazy guy. I mean, I remember my first time in Time magazine, they call me Crazy Jack. And I think crazy is good. We are crazy, but we're not stupid. We know what we are doing, but if everybody agree with me, if everybody believe our idea is good, we have no chance.
Well, so your question is, did I kind of anticipate what would happen over the last 22 years at Amazon? And the answer is, God, no. So, Amazon started as a very small company. It was me and a few other people. I was driving all the packages to the post office myself in my 1987 Chevy Blazer. When I raised money for Amazon, I had to raise $1 million, which I raised from 22 different investors, $50,000 each. They got 20% of the company for the $1 million. And it was 40 people told me no. So I had to take 60 meetings to get 20 yeses. The first question was always, what's the internet? And I had to walk through that. And this was 1994, early 95. And so did I anticipate, fast forward to today and the current version of it? No. It has been one foot in front of the other. And I think that is true for most businesses, where you kind of proceed adaptively. It's step by step. You figure it out. You have a success. And then you kind of double down on that success and you figure out what else you can do, what customers want. Everything we've done and all the success we have is at its root primarily due to the fact that we have put customers first.
So those few people are probably kicking themselves now that...
Well, it's very interesting. The 40 people who did not invest, it's kind of a study in human nature. I'm in touch with a few of them still, and some of them take it in great stride and they recognize that they actually have ridiculously happy lives. Others of them actually cannot talk about it. It is actually just too painful. That's human nature, and some people are better at rolling with the punches. Start to become overly cautious, kind of failure averse, and therefore unable to invent and pioneer. You cannot invent and pioneer if you cannot accept failure. To invent, you need to experiment. And if you know in advance that it's going to work, it is not an experiment. And so that's a very important thing. They are inseparable twins, failure and invention. And so you have to be willing to do that. And it's embarrassing to fail. It's always embarrassing to fail. But you have to say, no, that's not how this works. If I said to you, you have a 10% chance with a particular decision, a 10% chance of a 100x return, you should take that bet every time. But you're still going to be wrong 9 out of 10 times, and it's going to feel bad 9 out of 10 times. And with technology, the outcomes, the results can be very long-tailed. The payoff can be very asymmetric, which is why you should do so much experimentation. Everybody knows that if you swing for the fences, you hit more home runs, but you also strike out more. But with the baseball, that analogy doesn't go far enough, because with baseball, no matter how well you connect with the ball, you can only get 4 runs. The success is capped at 4 runs. But in business, every once in a while, you step up to the plate and you hit the ball so hard, you get 1,000 runs. And so when you have that kind of asymmetric payoff, and one at bat can get you 1,000 runs, it encourages you to experiment more. It's the right business decision to experiment more. By the way, one thing I should point out about failure, and this is a fine point, internally we take it, we know it, and we don't need to talk about it much, but there's a different kind of failure which is not what you want. That's where you have operating history, and you do know what you're doing, and you just screw it up. So that's not a good failure. That's not an experiment. That's just bad operational excellence. And so, like, if we've opened 130 fulfillment centers, we're on generation 8 of our fulfillment center technology. If we open a new fulfillment center and just woof it, we have to do some internal examination. That's not an experiment. That's just bad execution. So there's different kinds of failure, and you need to make sure you're making the right kind of failure. The right kind of failure should be an invention. It should be something that it's an experiment. You don't know if it's going to work, and you know up front that you don't know if it's going to work. That shouldn't be opening a new fulfillment center for us. I'm not sure I answered your question. I got distracted by failure.
That's okay.
I've lived so comfortably with failure for so long that I revert there on a dime.
It's an important distinction, though, between the two.
It is.
SpaceX and Tesla, although they're in a good position today, they went through some super tough times. And in fact, for SpaceX, I reserved capital to have 3 launch failures, or to withstand 2 launch failures and have the third one be a success, sort of 3 strikes. And actually, we had 3 launch failures. We were just able to scrape enough money together for a 4th flight that succeeded in 2008. And then also in 2008, as Steve knows, we got the Tesla financing round done on the last hour of the last day. It was like 6 p.m., December 24th, 2008. And if we hadn't gotten it done then, the company would have gone bankrupt a few days after Christmas. So
what he's not mentioning
very
is
narrow.
The only reason that happened is he wrote a check for the remainder of his wealth to save the company during payroll and Christmas when no one else would. And Goldman had just failed the private offering, and the financial collapse was amongst us. There was no DOE loan. There was no Daimler deal. The car had a negative gross margin. It was not pretty. Oh, and you had your largest shareholder just completely pissed off and going AWOL.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was ugly. Yeah. Yeah.
It was a stressful period.
And that was just at work.
Yeah. So for a while, there really wasn't a question of profit or non-profit. It was like, we need to live. How do we live? I had so many people try to talk me out of starting a rocket company. It was crazy.
What did they tell you?
One good friend of mine collected a whole series of videos of rockets blowing up and made me watch those. He just didn't want me to lose all my money.
When we moved to Silicon Valley, we had nothing. So we actually lived in the office. And we would sleep on the floor in the evening and go shower at the YMCA the next morning. And then we would be ready to go before some of our employees would arrive, so they wouldn't think we were actually sleeping in the office.
In 2008, the rocket company is not going well. You've had 3 failures.
Great.
The car company is hemorrhaging money.
Yeah.
And the American economy has tanked in the worst recession since the Great Depression.
Right.
What was that year like for you?
And I'm getting divorced, by the way.
He was essentially broke.
Oh yeah, in debt, more than broke.
More than broke.
Yeah.
I remember waking up the Sunday before Christmas in 2008 and thinking to myself, man, I never thought I was someone who could ever be capable of a nervous breakdown. But I felt this was the closest I've ever come, because it seemed pretty dark. We were running on fumes at that point. We had virtually no money.
So a 4th failure.
A 4th failure would have been absolutely game over.
Done.
Done.
Neil Armstrong, Gene Cernan have both testified against commercial spaceflight and the way that you're developing it, and I wonder what you think of that.
I was very sad to see that.
They inspired you to do this, didn't they?
Yes.
And to see them casting stones in your direction.
It's difficult.
Did you expect them to cheer you on?
Certainly hoping they would.
Did you think, I need to pack this in?
Never.
Why not?
I don't ever give up. I mean, I'd have to be dead or completely incapacitated.
So many things go wrong when you're starting a company, and often I think people ask, what mistakes should you avoid making? And my answer to that question is don't even bother trying to avoid mistakes, because you're going to make tons of mistakes, right? And the important thing is actually learning quickly from whatever mistakes you make and not giving up, right? And I mean, there are things every single year of Facebook's existence that could have killed us or made it so that it just seemed like moving forward and making a lot of progress just seemed intractable, but you just kind of bounce back and you learn, and nothing is impossible. You just have to kind of keep running through the walls.